One big story still dominating the business news today, really. It's the HSBC money laundering scandal. Owen, you've got the latest.
Stuart, as public acts of contrition, it's hard to beat this one. I'm not talking about Bob Diamond saying, I love Barclays. This time, of course, it's HSBC in the frame, Europe's largest bank. The head of compliance resigned in front of US senators, the same senators who've been investigating this institution for what has emerged to have been a decade at least of money laundering dating back the last 10 years or so. At least one head has now gone as a result of this affair. But the US Senate isn't really buying the contrition from HSBC. They still want to know how this bank allowed some of the world's most rogue states, as well as Mexican drug cartels, to channel so much cash through the US. Olivia Salazar-Winspear has the details.
Putting profits before the law, that was the damning judgment of a Senate panel who'd been looking into HSBC's dealings with questionable clients. The investigation uncovered what they called areas of key irresponsibility, including wire transfers of $16 billion to and from Iran, where references to the name of the country didn't feature on the paperwork. The fact that HSBC did business with a Saudi Arabian bank with suspected links to al-Qaeda. The bank's also accused of ignoring evidence of money laundering at its Mexican affiliate. Senators pointed out that multi-billion-dollar transfers from Mexico to the US were suspicious enough to suggest a link to the illegal narcotics trade. But the head of retail banking said he'd tried to safeguard HSBC from fraudulent transfers.
Decisions were made to stop US dollar cash handling in Mexico. We closed branches in areas where there's a high risk of money laundering. We're now in the process of closing all the HSBC Mexico accounts in the Caymans.
In the dock, there was repentance all round. The CEO of the bank's American arm apologized for its failure to act, adding that they were taking steps to address the problems identified. HSBC's head of compliance went one step further, handing in his notice during the hearing.
That now is the appropriate time for me and for the bank for someone new to serve as the head of group compliance. I have agreed to work with the bank's senior management towards an orderly transition of this important role.
The bank's set to be fined for its behaviour, a penalty that could cost them up to $1 billion.
Well, at the end of the day, HSBC shares opened up 2% in London after losing a similar amount in Hong Kong, holding up pretty well considering the money laundering scandal.
Well, HSBC had a reasonably good, if you can call it that, global financial crisis, Stuart, coming through the whole thing fairly well intact. Remember, this was a bank that expanded rapidly over the past decade, and that's partly why we had so many problems. As you say, HSBC's share price not too depressed, given everything that's happened in the last 24 hours. Let's take a look at the European markets, all in positive territory this Wednesday morning, all around 0.5% in the green. The Asian markets had a much choppier trading session, taking a lot of data from the US into account. You can see there the Hang Seng down around 1.5%, with the Nikkei was in positive territory for much of the trading session, but got into the red just before the close of play.
Earnings season well underway. Ericsson, the biggest loser of the day so far.
Just reported its earnings for the second quarter, Stuart, down to 1.1 billion kroner for the second quarter. That's a 64% decrease. That said, a lot of the other earnings have been reasonably robust. You can see some of the big Wall Street titans have reported earnings for the same period. Coca-Cola, Intel and Yahoo. You can see their earnings down around 4%, but reasonably good and in some cases beating expectations.
Well, a choppy trading session in Asia reflected the concern about where the US is heading. The world's biggest economy is on the brink of another recession. That's the start warning delivered by the country's central bank. New figures show growth will be limited, with the budget crisis and stuttering job creation compounding that problem.
A gloomy outlook for the US economy, and the clock's ticking in Congress if lawmakers want to avert a budgetary crisis. Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke said shrinking the deficit should be top of their agenda. In this mid-year report, Bernanke also announced a slight drop in overall unemployment, although it's very slow going. Small peaks in job creation have been followed by troughs, too.
However, after running at nearly 200,000 per month during the fourth and first quarters, the average increase in payroll employment shrank to 75,000 per month during the second quarter.
Bernanke listed the Eurozone crisis as a major contributing factor to his bleak forecast, as well as a sense of paralysis in Congress as focus turns to November's election. He told politicians they must act if they want to sidestep soaring interest rates before the year is out.
The U.S. economy has continued to recover, but economic activity appears to have decelerated somewhat during the first half of this year. After rising at an annual rate of 2.5% in the second half of 2011, real GDP increased at a 2% rate in the first quarter of 2012, and available indicators point to a still smaller gain in the second quarter.
This means growth could dip below 2% by the end of the year, far below what's needed for an economy like the US to pull itself clear of another recession. Bernanke said the Fed's prepared to take further action to promote a stronger economic recovery. Many believe this could be a reference to another round of quantitative easing, although some economists question how helpful that would be, warning that such measures could inflate the economy short term, only to leave it in a worse state than before.
OK, let's pick up on a few more of the day's business headlines for you now, starting with the French government questioning a key component of Peugeot's strategy as ministers and the French car maker sit down to discuss a massive redundancy plan. The Minister for Industrial Renewal says the French car maker's cost-cutting alliance with General Motors should be questioned. President François Hollande has led the outcry over Peugeot's decision to cut up to 8,000 jobs amid huge losses and overcapacity.
Now, the UK Central Bank is under more pressure over the Barclays Libor scandal after it emerged that US counterparts knew about the rate rigging months before it did. New York Federal Reserve officials say they were briefed about artificially low interbank lending rates up to a year before the Bank of England says it was alerted. The fraud has led to several high-profile resignations at Barclays, including Chief Executive Bob Diamond. Now, he took the Big Apple by storm earlier this year. I'm talking about Linsanity. Jeremy Lin, the basketball player who's kind of up here, became an overnight sensation playing for the New York Knicks, but he's off to join the Houston Rockets. Owen's been looking at the financial winners and losers here.
You know, he's actually quite short for a basketball player, but you're right, still a big guy, still well over 6 foot, and absolutely. You're absolutely right. It's the sensation of New York for this season. He came from nowhere, this guy. Wasn't even playing in the NBA last year. Became a massive marketing sensation for the New York Knicks. There he is in practice. He's just on the verge. We think it's all been done and dusted for a $25 million deal to go and play for the Houston Rockets. Now, as you say, there are going to be lots of winners and losers in this. Jeremy Lin last season sold more replica vests or jerseys than any other player in the NBA. And I'm talking about players like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, players with much bigger standings, arguably a little bit more talented as well. But he's got serious marketing potential. He's the first American player of Taiwanese descent, so he's got massive appeal among fans from that part of the world. Crucially, the Houston Rockets have brought Lin partly because of that marketing potential. They've already had a Chinese player, Yao Ming, who really was tall, Stuart, more like this sort of height. Okay. He played for them. He had massive reach in China, and this is what they want to do, try and sell some of their replica kits in a crucial emerging market.
Okay, it's a bit like the David Beckham argument, I suppose, isn't it? So I'm not really clear if Houston can really capitalise on Lin in the Asian markets. We should spare a thought for those who sell New York Knicks merchandise left with a load of worthless stock.
Well, this is it. Pity the poor New Yorkers now, who sold all these replica kits, now left with a lot of merchandise that isn't worth an awful lot. I had a quick look on Amazon before we came on air. You can see there on Amazon an NBA jersey with Jeremy Lin's number and name on. Would have been around $60 just a few weeks ago, now down to $20. And in some cases, we're seeing 90% discounts on this sort of merchandise.
Okay. What do they call him? Titch?
Should do. He's Linsanity. Well, Linsanity. In Houston, will they call him Linsanity? We'll see.
Thanks very much, Owen. Latest news very shortly with Catherine Norris-Trent. Stay with us.